delay, let's actually look into the list of topics that we'll be discussing today. So, the first topic has actually been picked up from the Indian Express page number 11 that discusses about top crops, price volatility and the Reserve Bank of India. So, here as the name suggests, top actually stands for tomato, onions as well as the potato crops. What are the issues of price volatility that these particular crops are actually having, and what are the countermeasures that have been taken by the government as well as the Reserve Bank of India? Because of late in 2024 mains examination, there was this particular topic of rising food inflation. What are the causes and what are the measures taken by the Monetary Policy Committee of the RBI? So this particular topic becomes very, very important for the examination. Moving on, the second topic has also been picked up from the Indian Express page number 15, significance of the livestock census, the species it will cover, etc. So here we'll be looking into what is the contribution of livestock, poultry as well as animal husbandry in the field of agriculture, and how much do they actually contribute to the GVA or the GDP, that is gross domestic product of the economy. So here it is important for us to understand the recently released 21st livestock census, how it is different from that of the 20th census and so on. Now moving forward, the third article has been picked up from page number 11 of the Hindu. India's Nature Conservation Index rank 176, government slammed. So in this particular article, the important takeaway for the prelims examination is to understand what is this India's Nature Conservation Index, and in South Asia, which is the country that actually lies ahead or in our neighborhood, like when compared to Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, etc. What are the countries that are ahead of us in terms of conservation of nature? And what are the reasons and what are the parameters in which India has actually lagged behind? How India has actually slowed down in achieving its SDG goals, etc. will be discussed over here. Moving on, the fourth article has been picked up from page number 15 of the Indian Express. Justice Sanjeev Khanna to be the next CJI. So as you know, here independence of the judiciary and the topic of judiciary itself becomes very, very important for the examination. So here we'll be looking at the office of the Chief Justice of India, the qualifications for a person to be a Chief Justice, what are the eligibility criteria, what is the method of appointment, how a CJI can be removed, what are the special roles that the CJI can do, etc. is what will be discussed over here. Moving on, these are some prelim snippets that you need to know. The first one is Thwaites Glacier, which is actually found on science section of the Hindu today. That is over here. We'll be discussing about what is Thwaites Glacier and in which part of Antarctica it is actually located, and why is it significant to understand this particular glacier in the backdrop of the recent climate change. Now moving forward, last but one article has been, with respect to that of digital arrest, and this has been taken from the Hindu page number 12 because the Prime Minister had actually cautioned against digital arrest in his recently released Man Ki Baat program. So here we'll understand what is this concept of digital arrest. Okay, so these are buzzwords that you can always use for your essay paper or in your GS2 paper, because it is actually concerned with respect to that of security. So you can write with respect to GS3 as well as GS paper 2 governance. Moving on, the last article for the day is that the private sector holds the key to India's e-bus push. So this particular article is an editorial from the Hindu where we've actually picked up only what is important for your prelims examination is the PM, e-drive scheme as well as the FAME scheme. So here we'll be discussing all these articles one by one. So now let us actually get into the discussion. So the first article for the day has been picked up from the Indian Express, top crops, price volatility and RBI. So very, very simple. Let us understand what we'll be discussing here. We'll be talking about the concept of food inflation. Next, we'll be talking about the top crops, that is the tomatoes, onions and the potatoes. What is inflation and what is the kind of volatility that these crops are facing. Moving forward, this particular topic becomes very, very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination. And specifically, if you see for the prelims examination, it is under economy. And for the mains examination, it is under GS paper 3, storage, transport and marketing of agriculture produce, and issues and related constraints, issues of buffer stocks and food security. So this is directly from your syllabus. So moving forward, let us understand what this article is actually talking about. Okay. So before that, in 2014, there has been, a question like, for example, what are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India, and comment on the effectiveness on monetary policy. This is 2024, not 14. So 2024, there has been a question that is in the recent mains examination. Now moving forward, let us understand why this particular article is in news. So basically, if you see, top actually stands for the crops of tomato, onion as well as potato. So here, before starting the article, you need to understand certain things, and after that we'll actually read what's actually given here. Okay. So these three crops, that is tomato, onion and potato, actually form a basis of our staple food, right? That is, we use onion, tomato and potato for our day-to-day consumption. So what happens is that there is a CPI basket. What do you mean by CPI basket? It is, one of a kind of an indicator of inflation. So first of all, what do you understand by inflation? Inflation is nothing but it is the persistent increase in the general price level of the goods. Okay. For example, if I have a good, or if I have a product, that is food product tomato, and if there is a consistent increase in the price level of tomato, I say that there has been inflation. Okay. So if it's over food products, then I actually call it as food inflation. So in order to measure this particular inflation, we have CPI, that is the Consumer Price Index. Okay, what is this? It is actually a basket that consists of number of goods that are actually consumed by the consumers, of which food and beverages are there, and other clothing are there, all these other things are there, where food actually forms the major part, which constitutes around 40%, okay, 40 to 42%. And of this, vegetables actually constitute 6%. And of this, the top vegetables, that is the tomato, onion and potato, constitute 2.2%. So ultimately what happens is, if there is a volatility means what? Sudden increase in the price, sudden decrease in the supply, sudden increase in the demand. All this is called as volatility. In case if there is a volatility in the top, produce, that is the tomato, onions and the potatoes, what happens? That will actually impact the vegetable inflation. That will further impact the CPI inflation, and overall it actually results in the food inflation. Simple. So this is what is happening, and we will know why there is a price volatility and what are the government initiatives in order to control the same. And next one is what is the way forward. So this is what we'll be looking at this particular article. So the Reserve Bank of India is facing challenges in controlling food inflation in India, particularly due to the volatile crops such as the top crops, that is tomatoes, onion and potatoes, which have significantly impacted the inflation dynamics. So this is what we'll be discussing here. Moving forward, what are top crops? I already explained what are top crops, right? These are tomatoes, onions and potatoes, which are the staple vegetables in India, in the Indian diet. And next, they are essential for both the rural and the urban consumption. So this is why they are of more economic as well as social importance. Okay. Now moving forward, let us see what is the role of top crops in India's inflation. I told you about the CPI basket, right? A measure of inflation which consists of a number of items, with consumer durables, etc. So here, this CPI basket actually has 299 items, of which around 6.04 is the contribution of the vegetables. And of this, these vegetables, that is the top vegetables, constitute around 2.2 in the CPI basket, okay, for an individual or an Indian household, if you see. Although these top crops actually are relatively small, right? Because see here, out of the 299 products, these, the contribution of these three is only 2.2%. However, it is small in the CPI basket. What happens? Their volatility in the price will have an outsized influence. For example, in 2024, if you see, the vegetable inflation actually surged by an amount of 36 to 40%. Okay, that is, the price rapidly skyrocketed, or it shot up. So this contributed to 42.8% of the overall CPI inflation, with 63%. So that is what I'm saying. Here there is actually vegetable inflation, and that actually resulted in overall CPI inflation, and that actually resulted in vegetable inflation, and then it actually resulted in food inflation. So this is what they are saying, and it was primarily driven by our top crops. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, if you see, there has been year on year hike in the price levels. For example, tomatoes, it has increased by 42%, onions by 66%, potatoes by 65%. So all these are the amount by which it has actually increased, and this is the CPI weightage. Okay, as I told you, food and beverages actually constitute a mega lion's share, that is 46, followed by the pan, tobacco and intoxicants, that is actually 2%, and then 10% is housing, and then you have clothing and footwear, that is 7%. The fuel and light is remaining 7%, and the 28% is miscellaneous. Okay, so this is what you need to know about what is inflation and CPI. Now let us see, why are there volatile issues only with respect to TOP crops? Okay, so first one, let's see with respect to tomatoes. So you know, basically the nature of tomato is it has a very small shelf life, right? So it is easily perishable. That is one thing. So perishability. Next one, it follows the Cobwell model effect. What happens is that the farmers actually think that the price of the tomatoes has increased, let's produce more. So when they produce more, there is oversupply. Okay, when supply and demand do not match each other, what happens? The price immediately falls. So this is what is called as the cobweb model effect. That is where the farmers respond to high prices by increased production, and that will eventually lead to oversupply, and the price actually crashes in the subsequent season. So that is what it is. Next one, there are seasonal variations. Okay, because there are three seasons, right? Crop seasons. What are they? The Kharif season, the Rabi season, as well as the Zaid season. This rainy season, that is Kharif season, and the Rabi season, that is the winter season, are the seasons of this particular production. Okay, in case production of tomatoes, in case if there is erratic rainfall and there is delay, or in case if there is pest infestation and if there is delay, then there is again volatility in the price. Next is, if you want to know about the major tomato producing states, it includes Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, West Bengal, then Chhattisgarh, we have Telangana as well, and Tamil Nadu. These are the major producing states of tomatoes in the country. Now moving forward, onions. So what is the price volatility and the reason behind that? One is the storage constraints. Okay, that is the onions which are actually produced specifically during the Rabi season, only they are suitable for storage, because since Rabi is a dry condition, it actually needs less of a moisture content for storage. Okay, so that is why they say there are storage constraints for the onion as well. So here, unlike other crops, onions have only one storage ready crop, that is only during the Rabi season. Okay, so even if there is a slight delay, again there is going to be a price volatility. Next one, there are weather related disruptions. We know that, right? For example, if there are incessant rainfall, this actually happened recently in Telangana, Maharashtra, etc. in 2024. So there was actually disruptions in the supply, and hence what happens when there is shortage in the supply, the prices of the onions will skyrocket. Also, there is limited cold storage facility, okay, where you actually have the what to say, the produce, actually you actually store it in the buffer. So there is actually limited cold storage facilities. And next one is the major producing states, again include Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, then you have Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, etc. Now moving forward, the last one we'll read about potatoes. This also has seasonal supply issues. Okay, so potatoes, when they are mainly stored, is that from the period of May, that is this rainy season, to November, that is the Rabi season, and the prices typically spike in the Rabi season only when the stored crop starts to perish. Okay, when it is actually starting to decay, then what happens is that the prices will actually start to increase. So this dependency also creates volatility, okay, when there is actually a shortfall in the production. Again, there is cold storage issues over here. Next one, there is input costs, cost sensitivity. So, though we know that potatoes sometimes referred to as poor man's food, okay, and also it is consumed in larger quantity, we think that the incentives or the inputs which is used for the production is very less, but it has lot of input costs. What do you mean by input costs? That is nothing but fertilizers, what kind of pesticides I use, the water management, irrigation facilities, all those things. Okay, so they are also reflected in the market prices. And finally, if you see the major producing states, it includes Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, as well as Bihar. So now you know what are these top crops and why there are actually price volatility. So here, let us see some government measures. So obviously, when there is a price volatility and when there are supply demand constraints or mismatch, what happens? The government actually comes up with certain measures. One such measure is the Operation Green. Very, very important. This has appeared in many of your Group 1 examinations, and so that you need to know about it. Okay. So what is Operation Green? You know, it was actually introduced by the government in order to stabilize the prices of the TOP. So particularly initially it was introduced for TOP. So not only with respect to, for example, if I'm a farmer who's actually producing onions, okay. So if 1 kg of onion is 40 rupees and in the international market, if I can sell it for 400 rupees, what happens is that I obviously will prefer moving to what? I will prefer moving to the here. So if it is 40 rupees in my market and if it is actually sold for 400 rupees in the international market, I will eventually move on to this 400 rupees, right? So in order to curb that, what happened? The government came up with this Operation Green scheme where they actually imposed something called as the custom duty. What do you mean by custom duty? I'll actually have to pay an amount to the government before I export my product to the other countries. Okay, so this actually stopped a number of farmers from exporting it abroad, and they actually, you know, catered to the local demands. Okay, for that only Operation Greens were actually introduced. And not only with respect to that of custom duties, they also brought about other provisions like how to talk about the post-harvest losses. What are the input subsidies or the incentives we can give? For all that purpose, Operation Greens was introduced. But why was it a failure? It was initially introduced only for the top crops, but then later on, all the fruits and vegetables were also included under this particular Operations Green scheme. Thereby, what happened? It actually became diluted. Okay. So this is what it is. Next is export duty and bans that we already spoke of, and also there were cold chain infrastructures that were actually brought about through private public-private partnership, enabling or encouraging the private sectors to invest in our cold storage systems, etc., was actually done by the government. And finally, the lack of MSP. So top, that is the tomatoes, onions as well as the potatoes are not included under minimum support price, okay, like the other Kharif and the Rabi crops. So this actually has to be included. So this is also one of the reasons why we are discussing this. Now moving forward, what is the way forward? Of course, we need an update in the CPI basket, okay. That is the current weights that have been given for the top crops in the CPI basket are based on the consumption patterns, which is actually from a very, very old, that is 2011-12 consumption survey, household consumption survey. So that actually needs an update, okay. So it is almost 2025 right now, so it has to be updated. Also, we need to strengthen our cold storage infrastructure. So this actually, when the stocks or whatever is in buffer has a good cold storage system, what happens? This will reduce the post-harvest losses, and this will also help us stabilize the prices of the products, especially during the surplus periods. Next one, you need to introduce the minimum support price in order to give one financial security to the farmers, okay. So when you are actually procuring, they do not go for the middlemen, etc. They do not try to export it abroad rather than to cater to the local demand. So this will ensure more stable income. So these are some of the way forwards. And also we need to promote agro processing. What do you mean by that? Whatever produce is actually in surplus, we need to include them into the value added products, such as we need to make them not only just selling it by selling it as a raw vegetable or whatever it is, or a fruit. Here you need to make an intermediate product like tomato paste. You can make onion flakes, and you can make dry potatoes, dehydrated potatoes, etc. And this will actually try to compensate or manage the supply demand mismatches and also handle your volatility. So this is what is this article talking about. Now, we've actually understood what is this inflation, CPI basket, and how TOP plays an important role. Now, quickly, let's move on to the second article, that is significance of livestock census. So, what is livestock? So, here it is very, very important to understand the concept. It actually includes your cows, sheep, buffalo, lamb, cock, hen, etc., right? And all the other, birds also, poultry. So, let us actually see. In this article, we'll be discussing about livestock census, an important part of agriculture, important for your prelims examination, that is economy, and for your mains examination, it comes under GS paper 3, economics of animal rearing. So these topics are actually taken based on your PYQs as well as your syllabus, okay? So here in the mains examination 2015, there has been a question that is livestock rearing has a big potential for providing employment in the specifically in the rural areas, and now you need to suggest few of these suitable measures to promote the sector in India. So here you can actually infer that livestock becomes very important. Sometimes they can talk about what is the contribution of livestock in agriculture and to the GDP of the country. Sometimes they can be very specific to a scheme, or sometimes the question can be like based on the livestock census, that is 21st livestock census, consider the following statement. So there also you must be prepared with this particular topic, okay? Now moving forward, recently there was this 21st livestock census and it was launched by the Union Minister of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying in New Delhi. Now moving on, let's understand what is livestock census. This is nothing but it is basically a survey, okay? So this is conducted every 5 years, okay? It will actually have details of how many cows, how many buffaloes, how many cattle, how many domesticated animals and poultry are there, what are the number of stray animals, gender-wise classification, all that is actually given. So this is conducted by the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying, that comes under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Very important topic. Important point to note. Nodal agencies are important. So what are the types of data that is collected? That is, what is the species, what are the kind of breeds, what is the sex, it belongs to whom, that is the ownership, all that is calculated, and this actually gives an insight on the country's livestock population. So based so based on this data, what happens is that you actually will know what are all the policies and the programs that the government actually has to come up for the welfare of animal husbandry, the pastoralists, that is the people rearing them, as well as the dairy sector. So this is what is the basis of livestock census. And since 1919, a total of around 20 livestock censuses have actually been conducted, and the previous one was in 2019, that is 5 years back. And these are your livestock, okay? It includes your cow, lamb, horse and all these birds as well. Now moving forward, let us see what is the contribution of livestock in Indian economy. You need to know, right? See, agriculture as a whole contributes to around 17 to 18% to the GDP. Okay, similarly, manufacturing contributes. Then you have these lists, right? That is the primary sector, the secondary sector, the tertiary sector. So services will contribute around 35%, manufacturing will contribute around 20%, and agriculture per se as a primary sector contributes to around 17% of the gross domestic product, that is to the growth of the economy. And as a part of that 17%, of that 17%, what happens? 30% of this 70% is contributed by this animal husbandry. Do you understand? And particularly of this 30%, if you see, 4% actually is by the livestock sector. And apart from that, it also contributes to the dairy industry, and also it actually enables India to reach faster towards its target of sustainable development goals, that is SDG 2 of zero hunger. So here the livestock sector plays an important role. It provides employment specifically to the people of rural India, and moreover entirely, if you see, in terms of productivity of the agriculture sector, poultry and animal husbandry as a whole contributes to around 30% of the GVA, out of which 4.7% is by the livestock sector. And also the data will actually help us to realize how much far we've actually moved in achieving the SDGs, specifically SDG 2, that is actually zero hunger, SDG 2.5 that talks about maintaining genetic diversity in food and agriculture production, and then 2.5.2, this talks about how much of livestock breeds that are at the risk of extinction. So all this should be taken care of under SDG. So having a livestock census with all these data is going to help us in order to formulate policies better for the welfare. If you see key facts on the recent 21st livestock census, it was completely digital. The previous census was also completely digital, because sometimes they can ask, this was the first ever digitally launched livestock census. No, the previous was also digital. So here the enumeration of the census will actually take place from October 2024 to 2025. It is fully digitized. Of course, we know it actually involves online data, and this is actually collected via digital dashboards. There are actually separate apps for it, and also GPS in order to record the locations of this. And also, what is the scope of data collection? It will actually include 16 animal species. What are they? Cattle, buffalo, yak, sheep, goat, pig, dog, rabbit, elephants, horse, ponies, mules, donkeys, etc. So here going through this is also important. Sometimes they can ask you like which of this does not belong, which of these are not taken into account for livestock. Next one, the census will also account for 219 indigenous breeds of the above species, and these are recognized by Indian Council for Agriculture Research and National Bureau of Animal Genetic Resources. This is also important for you to remember. Now moving forward, let us see. Besides these, the census will actually carry out a head count of not only cattle but also poultry, which actually means birds. That again includes chicken, duck, turkey, geese, etc. And apart from that, it has ostrich as well as emu also. These are all kinds of birds. So how this is different from the previous census is that it now includes the pastoral animals and the pastoralists. Okay, so here for the first time, the data will be collected on the contributions made by the pastoralists to the livestock sector. Who are pastoralists? Normally those who herd these cattle. So these are called, and what is their economics, socio-economic status, what is their livestock holdings, they actually own how much of cattle, all this will be taken into account. And also household livestock contribution will also take place. So this actually talks about the proportion of the households whose income actually totally comes from only livestock rearing. So apart from pastoralist, also the contribution of the household. Next one is the stray cattle. Stray cattle, it's not domesticated. It does not have ownership, right? So whichever are the cattle or the buffalo and the cows that are roaming, they actually are also classified based on their gender. So these are the 3 points that are new with respect to this particular livestock census when compared to the previous one. Now moving on, the third article that we'll be discussing today is India's Nature Conservation Index rank 176 and government being slammed. See, in the backdrop of the recent climate change and, the soaring global temperatures, the ozone depletion and, the GHG emissions and congestion, rapid urbanization, etc. What happens is that environmental conservation and protection has actually taken a toll. So with respect to that, you need to know what is the ranking that India actually has and how India has actually fared well with respect to that of the conservation status of biodiversity. Okay, so in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the Global Nature Conservation Index 2024, which are the South Asian countries which have actually done better and which are the parameters where India has not done better. And this particular article becomes very, very important for both your prelims as well as mains examination. For your prelims, it's under environment and ecology, and in mains examination, it is under paper 3, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation. So let's quickly move. So these indices, and they are actually released by which of the organization? India has actually received what rank, whether it is an upgrade or a slip from the previous year ranking, and the parameters where India was actually not able to perform well, all that becomes very important for your exam. So similarly in 2018, we have a question on rule of law index is released by which of the following organizations. So similarly, this global nature of conservation can also be asked in your examination. So in this particular article, we are discussing about India's rank as 176th of the 180 countries. It's just 5 of the worst countries, okay, in global nature conservation index 2024. Let us actually see what is this particular index and who releases it, how it is calculated, etc. So this is nothing but it is a data driven tool. It is, what is this tool? It actually evaluates different countries. What are the efforts of different countries in balancing conservation on one hand and development on the other hand. So this is what it is. So here you actually see country's efforts to balance conservation and development. What is the objective? It actually provides the governments, researchers, and the organizations what are all the insights one must have in order to, first we need to know what are the environmental challenges I have, right? For example, if I have challenges with respect to land degradation or conversion of lands for agriculture and industrial purposes, all that I need to know so that I can devise long term policy actions. So this actually provides the governments and research, okay, these researchers the actionable insights of what kind of policies I need to take for the protection of my biodiversity. Moving forward, developed by the Goldman Sonnenfeld School of Sustainability and Climate Change at Ben Gurion University of the Negev in collaboration with biodb.com. This is nothing but it is a non-profit organization dedicated to maintaining the data of biodiversity. Basic is that this index, India is actually one of the worst performing countries, unfortunately, 176 out of the 180th, okay? And that's what you need to know. Now, moving forward, you can all, quote this in your Environment and Ecology GS paper 3, answer writing. Now, what are the parameters? First is land management, okay? So, how effectively a country actually has used its land, that is actually taken into consideration. So, here also, India unfortunately has a lot of land conversion towards agriculture and for the industrial purposes. Next one, threats to biodiversity. Of course, because India already struggles to actually, meet SDG 14, that is life below water, and SDG 15, life on land, okay? So, there are threats to biodiversity, and across 25,000 square kilometers of forest have been degraded in India. Very, very sad, okay? So, this is the another parameter where it is called as threats to biodiversity apart from land management. Next is what is the capacity, that is what is the institutional capacity of your country? What is the governance structure to tackle the biodiversity loss? This actually talks about. Now, moving forward is what will be your future trends, that is what kind of future developments towards the health of biodiversity and the conservation you will be taking care of apart from your current policies. So based on this, there is actually a ranking provided for each country. Now moving forward, let's see what has been India's performance. So unfortunately, we actually saw that we are in the 176th out of 180th countries with a score of around 46 on 100. So we are one among the bottom performers, and apart from India, we also have countries like Kiribati, Turkey, Micronesia. All these are the other countries which are actually on the low score. If you see whenever you know India's ranking, we need to know in South Asia whether we performed better or not, okay? But here, that again is a letdown for India. At rank 15, with a score of around 63.1, Bhutan is the only South Asian country among the top 50 ranks, and Nepal is actually next at 60, followed by Sri Lanka and Pakistan. Okay, so these are the takeaways of this particular report. So what are the key reasons for India's low ranking? I already told you, right? India actually has a lot of land conversion issues, and if you see here, 53% of the land has been converted for urban, industrial and agriculture purposes. So when there is land conversion for all these purposes, then where will be your forest, okay? So here that is what? It is going to affect your ecosystem and biodiversity. Next one, biodiversity threats. We have around 23,000 square kilometers of tree cover has been felled out between the year of 2001 and 2019. Also, there is excessive soil pollution because there is a lot of usage of fertilizers and pesticides, okay? Because, there was a nitrogen index where we actually have the amount of nitrogen in your soil has actually soared up. So, here we have nitrogen index of 0.77 signals severe health issues, okay? So, these are also the reasons why India has actually performed very, badly. Next reason is the illegal wildlife trade that actually happens in India. Because if you see, India is the 4th largest illegal wildlife trader, and this is estimated to around 15 billion euros, okay, in annual sales, which actually possesses a serious threat to the biodiversity. And apart from all that, as such, we have this climatic vulnerabilities where, you know, they have very, very sensitive ecosystems. The mangroves are actually going, the aquatic ecosystems, the coral reefs are further being depleted, and this necessitates urgent climate adaptation strategies. So this is what this particular index has actually spoken about. Moving on, the next article, very, very important. Justice Sanjeev Khanna, he will actually be the next Chief Justice of India. So here it is very important for us to understand what are the qualifications for a person to become the Chief Justice of India. What is the process of appointment, whether the president appoints him or, you know, the Lok Sabha appoints him, what is it? Because these kind of questions become very tricky in your examination. Process of removal, whether the Chief Justice or the office of Chief Justice is under the right to information or not, what has been the recent Supreme Court judgment on it, all becomes important for discussion. So in this particular article, we will be discussing about the judiciary, then the Chief Justice of India, and this is important for your mains examination, structure, organization and functioning of the executive and the judiciary, and for the prelims examination, it's important under polity. So if you see, in 2017, there was actually a question on the Supreme Court's judgment on NJAC. Okay, so there are two systems, right? One is the NJAC, and this actually came up with respect to the appointment of the judges. Next one is the collegium system. Okay, so here you need to know about NJAC, and it talks about the NJAC Commissions Act of 2014 with reference to appointment of judges of the higher judiciary. So appointment of judges of the judiciary is always important for your examination, and also the jurisdiction like appellate, jurisdiction, the original jurisdiction, all that becomes important. So why this particular article is in news? The centre has actually appointed Justice Sanjeev Khanna as the next Chief Justice of India, formally approving the recommendations of the present Chief Justice of India, Mr. D.Y. Chandrachud. So what happens is that the outgoing Chief Justice of India usually recommends a name of the senior most judge of the Supreme Court who can actually become the next Chief Justice. And this is further, sent by the law minister to the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister actually advises the President, and finally this actually takes place. Now let us see quickly who is the Chief Justice of India and how is she or he appointed. Qualification is that if I want to be the Chief Justice of India, first of all, I need to be a citizen of India. I should have served as a judge of a high court or multiple high courts in succession, that is next to next, for around 5 years, or I should have actually been an advocate of a high court or multiple high courts in succession for at least 10 years. Or in the eye of the President, I must be a distinguished jurist. Only then I am qualified to be a Chief Justice of India. So how does the appointment takes place? Here, the CJI, be it the Chief Justice of India or the Supreme Court judges, are appointed by the President, and this is as per Article 124 Clause 2 of the Constitution. So what happens is that the outgoing Chief Justice actually recommends the successor, and this is actually forwarded by the Union Law Minister to the Prime Minister, and he actually advises the President. And if you see in the second judge's case of 1993, the Supreme Court ruled that the senior most judge of the Supreme Court should be appointed as the Chief Justice of India. So apart from the qualifications, now you know how is the appointment. Okay. Now there is something called as a Supreme Court collegium. Okay. So here what happens? This collegium system did not come through any kind of act of the parliament. Okay. That is very, very important. It does not come by a constitutional provision also. So this came after successive rulings of the Supreme Court. Let's see. The Supreme Court Collegium, which oversees the appointment as well as the transfer of the judges. This collegium is nothing but it has a group of judges. Okay. So that oversees the transfer and the appointment of the judges, and that is headed by the Chief Justice of India, and it has 4 senior judges of the court, and this has actually evolved through the Supreme Court rulings and not by the act of the parliament or by a constitutional provision. So this you need to know. Okay. However, appointment is actually under Article 124 of the Constitution. What are the administrative powers of this particular CJI? First, he is often referred to as the primus inter pares. So what does that mean? he is actually the first among equals. Okay, so here he actually has certain other powers that the normal judges actually do not have. As the administrative head, he has the authority of allocating the cases, okay, to different benches. And also, see, as I told you, he has the power to allocate the cases to specific benches. He can also determine the number of judges, how many judges can hear a particular case, because you have 8:1, 7:2 like that, right? So totally 9 judges. So that is why it's called as a 9-judge bench, okay? So this is what it is, which can influence the outcomes by selecting the judges that may align with a certain perspective. And also these two decisions can be taken by him even without the consent of the collegium or without requiring the stated reasons. He need not mention this is the reason why I have given this case to that bench, okay? So it is under his particular discretion. Now moving forward, how is the removal actually done? The removal is also done by the president, but not by the discretion of the president, not that, the president actually decided and he removed. It has to be by special majority of both the houses of the parliament. What does that mean? 3/4 of majority of the house who are present and voting. Only by that special majority this particular CJI can be removed. So CJI can be removed by the president only after the parliament presents an address supported by a special majority in both the houses, that is majority of the total membership, and at least 2/3 of the members present and voting. So this is very, very important. And grounds of removal are what? They are mentioned as per the constitutional provision of Article 124 clause 4, either by proven misbehavior or incapacity. And also the final note that you have to make, one of the recent developments in the Supreme Court Chief Justice of India office is that the Supreme Court in 2019 ruled that the office of the Chief Justice of India falls under the scope of Right to Information Act, that is 2005. So this is what is about the office of the Chief Justice of India. Now moving forward, there is this article that was mentioned in your science section of the Hindu. It was talking about carbon credits, and towards the left side you had an image of the Thwaites Glacier. This becomes very, very important because it's actually called as a doomsday glacier or a moving glacier. Why is it so, and how is it actually different from the rest of the glaciers across the world? Why is it called a doomsday glacier or a moving glacier? Usually what happens is that, let me explain the concept. So this is your continent, right? If this is your continent, what happens? This becomes base of your continent. Then it actually goes here, and then this is actually your ocean, and this is your ocean bottom floor, right? But what happens is that this Thwaites Glacier, which is located in the western part of the Antarctic. So you can see, why is she talking about continent? Okay, Antarctic is an ocean. No, actually there are different polar regions, right? Arctic and the Antarctic. Arctic is nothing but it is actually the frozen ocean, and if you see the Antarctic, it is frozen land. So that is what it is. So here usually this is the base of the continent, and this is usually the ocean bottom floor. But in case of the Thwaites Glacier, which is located in the western part of the Antarctic, how it is located, let me tell you. So here in this case, imagine that this is the Thwaites Glacier, what I'm going to draw. So the base, this base of this glacier is located below the sea level. So with already existing, increased global warming and increase in the temperature, there is intrusion of a warmer water over here. Okay, when the warmer water intrusion is over here, it is further aggravating the, retreation. What do you mean by, retreat? Is that moving of the glacier and further intrusion of warm water. What happens? It will actually make this glacier break apart and it will move away. So when there is breakage of the glacier, what happens? It ultimately results in further sea level rise, and that is why we actually have these submerging coastlines. Okay, so this is what it is. So here I hope you understood the concept. So let's see. Thwaites Glacier, often called as a doomsday glacier. It is rapidly moving glacier in West Antarctica, I told you, and it is actually so, it is big in size that at its widest point alone, it actually measures around 120 kilometers, and it almost is a land area which actually is synonymous with that of the size of Great Britain. Okay, and due to climate change and shifts in the ocean circulation, that is why I told you, right, ocean circulation is changing, so there is more of intrusion of warmer water, and so here the glacier is losing ice at a fast rate, and this releases over 50 billion tons of ice into the ocean. So when there is so much of ice that actually falls into the ocean, this will account for sea level rise, which is approximately 4%. And this Thwaites Glacier alone contains enough ice to rise the global sea levels by 65 centimeters, and it has already retreated for around 14 kilometers as late of 1990s. Additionally, it acts as a crucial barrier. Okay, so when this glacier is there, it actually acts as a barrier for the falling and the retreation of the other glaciers. But when this retreats, what happens? Others will also retreat, and it will further result in the increase in the sea level rise. So this is one small thing that we had to discuss on Thwaites Glacier. So this is what it is. Okay, so if you see, there is actually Thwaites Glacier. So this is the glacier, and here you can actually, this is the glacier, and yeah, this glacier, and you can see the bottom, and this bottom portion actually is under the sea. I'm not able to write on this. So it is under the sea, if you see. So glacier remains stable where it is in contact with the seabed. Then what happens? There is changing circulation. So ice becomes less stable because the glacier retreats after losing grip on the seabed, because you actually have the warm water flow from the sea because of the changes in the climate. So this is what it is. Now let's move on to the next article quickly. What is called as digital arrest? Of late, there have been a lot of cyber frauds. Okay, so that is, you suddenly receive a call stating that we are from the customs department, we are from the income tax department, and we've actually found out that your account has actually been involved in money laundering. Your account has actually been involved in drug trafficking or trafficking of the antiquities or antiques from India. So because of this, what happened? Almost around 120 crore worth of money has actually been scammed in India. So in the recently addressed Man Ki Baat, the Prime Minister had spoken about the digital arrest scams during his Man Ki Baat radio program. And here, India has lost over 120 crore of money in the digital arrest frauds when you take the period of January to April, in the just a gap of 4 months. So what is digital arrest? It refers to a scam where an individual is falsely informed that they are under investigation. They say that we are calling you from the CBI, you are under investigation or arrest for illegal activities, especially the digital activities or their online presence. So here what happens, whoever is actually the fraud person, what happens, they impersonate the law enforcement or government authorities, and they tell the victims that their digital footprint involvement, that is at nothing but they will say that we found your digital presence here and you're involved in crimes like money laundering and other illegal activities like cyber crime, etc. So this is what it is. And the scammers then demand the payment, often through online transfers, in order to settle the case or to avoid the arrest. And that is how people have actually lost money to this particular cyber fraud. Okay, so they give threats of arrest in the name of fake international parcels of banned drugs, and then organized economic crime, and it is operated by the cross-border crime syndicates. Okay, so we need to be very, very careful of this. Since digital arrest is something was in news, I just wanted to bring this to your notice. Now let's move to the next article, the last article for discussion, PM E-Drive scheme. So as I told you, this is actually an editorial, right? So here we'll be discussing about how India is actually moving towards electronic vehicles. Okay, so there was an e-bus scheme which is actually discussed over here. So we'll discuss what is PM E-Drive scheme. So PM Electric Drive Revolution in Innovative Vehicle Enhancement. This is called as the PM E-Drive scheme. What is the objective? Obviously, in order to increase or to persuade or to motivate the citizens to adopt the electric vehicles in India, thereby there's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions because so many of us actually have private vehicles, right? Two-wheelers, four-wheelers, the diesel vehicles that actually, increases the release of the GHG. So further congestion, further emission, further pollution. So this is what it is. In that backdrop, they have brought up this PME drive scheme. So this actually reduces the environmental impact of transportation and improves the air quality. The outlay is around 11,000 crores and the period is around 2024 to 2026. Nodal ministry is Ministry of Heavy Industries and implementation is Project Implementation and Sanctioning Committee is there and an interministerial empowered committee. This is an interministerial committee headed by the Secretary of Heavy Industries. This is constituted for overall monitoring, sanctioning and implementation of the scheme. So here eligible criteria is your two-wheelers are eligible, three-wheelers are eligible, and then you have the L5. What do you mean by L5? The vehicles where the speed is actually more than 25 kilometer per hour. So that is the e-trucks, buses, then charging infra, then upgradation of testing agencies. All these are included under this particular scheme. Now moving forward, the key components of the scheme, subsidies and demand incentives are actually given. Whoever actually opts for this, the subsidy is actually given. E-vouchers are also provided. E-ambulance deployment service is there. That is rupees 500 crore is dedicated, okay, for eco-friendly patient transport. Next one, incentives for e-trucks and also charging infrastructure where you can charge, okay. So 2,000 crore for public charging stations in high EV penetration cities and also along selected highways, okay. So here, now let us having discussed all the 7 topics, let's solve few MCQs as well as the mains practice question. The first question reads, the Global Nature Conservation Index is released by which of the following? Of course, it is not the UNEP. It is direct, right? It is the Goldman Sonnenfeld School of Sustainable and Climate Change. So your answer here becomes B. Now moving forward, the second question reads, with reference to the 21st livestock census, consider the following. So, it is the first ever livestock census in India to have online data collection. No, the previous edition also had online data collection, so this is wrong. It is the first livestock census in India to collect data on pastoralist contribution. Yes, this is correct. So, since only the second statement is correct, here also the answer becomes B. Now moving forward, let's solve the mains practice question. This talks about, discuss the role of top in influencing India's CPI and headline inflation. What are the key factors contributing to volatility of these commodities and what policy measures can be taken for stabilizing the prices? Again, here we'll divide this into the introduction, the body as well as the conclusion. In the introduction, you will talk about what is this top, that is how this trio, that is tomato, onion and potatoes, how it actually influences the how it plays an essential role in influencing the inflation and also what are the fluctuation of these commodities. In the body, we'll talk about what are the key factors, okay. So one is the seasonal variation, then there are supply chain inefficiencies that actually happen, all those things we'll discuss, and also we'll talk about market speculation, the dependency on the weather, etc. And also what are the different policy measures, that is one is improve your infrastructure by means of cold storage, etc. Next is improve your PDS, that is public distribution system. Also you need to provide support for the farmers by in terms of providing MSP for the top crops as well. And finally, in the conclusion, we need to say that implementing all these measures can actually stabilize the price, lessen or mitigate the volatility and the impact that TOP has on inflation. So over here with this, we've actually come to the end of our session. And as you know, we are coming up with a lot of products like our GS Foundation, as well as we have our, NCRT Foundation course as well. The admissions are open and please do follow us. We have our DNR, our daily news analysis, where we actually take very important topics from the newspaper. We have test and assessment as well. And for all these, please do stay tuned and please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel for more such interesting topics and live sessions. So thank you.